Hi, this is Mark again, and you've probably watched the welcoming video to the Natural Rights Sangha and possibly the two about the precepts. Well, this presentation is to talk about another part of the Natural Rights Sangha, which is a page on the website too, and that is the recommended practices, pointers, and possibilities. And we're going to do some of them in this and some of them in a second video, unless I move a lot faster than I thought I was going to. Now, I'm going to read these to you. I'm sorry I have to put my glasses on. You have the big screen here filming me, so I've got to read off my smaller screen. Yeah. So recommended practices, pointers, and possibilities. And it says some of these are to be used occasionally and others are suggested general guidelines for daily living. Well, that's pretty much inherent as we talk about them, which are which. Now, the first one is to examine feelings, shame and pride, of guilt and innocence, of love and hate, and similar dualistic concepts, while asking, are there really two? Or is there really only all that is? In other words, all that is being beyond numbers, and not even one works because one implies two. That's a heavy one. But what I'd like to say about this one is that's a long-term study for a lot of people. But what I'd like to mention about it is our language is dualistic. Everything is relative. Okay, when we talk about the relative, we talk about the duality, we talk about the world, we talk about Maya, samsara. You know, this is all the relative is what we're talking about. And Leela is, if it seems happy, generally we call it Leela because it's playful. But what every sage has found throughout the ages is that to express something which is not dualistic and not relative in a language which is inherently dualistic is very difficult. And we are very lucky to live today, because in the last, I'd say 40 to 50 years especially, even the last 20 to 30, a huge number of books have come out and presentations on YouTube, and teachers have come out who are sharing things that before were not so clear in spiritual traditions. Some of these things that we can read about now or see on YouTube were hidden until you had done years of apprenticeship with a master who finally decided he or she would tell you about the great secrets. Well, like the sage of Ojai, California says, that's Robert Wolf, like he says, it's not really secret, it's sacred. And they kept it secret because it could be misused. Well, it's out there now. And sometimes it is misused, but we'll speak more about that, or you can ask questions about that later. Questions, of course, can come to me at mark@naturalrightsangha.org. We'll go to the second one. And this is a biggie. And it's take the time to fully examine Ananda. That is, to compare and correlate the meanings of Ananda, of sat-chit-ananda, to the deeper meaning of the words from Philippians 4 regarding, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. My teacher in Mumbai, Ramesh Bolsakar, used to call it Sukha Shanti. Shanti meaning peace, and Sukha meaning the supreme peace, the ultimate peace. Now, I'm going to hold this up. This is sat-chit-ananda, and which means truth, consciousness, bliss. Now, truth can also be interpreted reality or being. So it could be reality, consciousness, bliss, or being, consciousness, bliss. Notice that we are members of the Natural Rights Sangha. Well, here's the word Sangha. A satsang, which is what some spiritual teachers give to groups of people, they call their meetings satsangs, and only a truly high teacher should use that term, actually. Sat is the same sat as here. And song means group or gathering. So a sat song is a group of people who've come together to hear the truth, to learn the truth. Now, a sangha is almost the same thing, except the sangha is a group of people who are unified in wishing for the truth. In Buddhism, a sangha sometimes is considered to be just monks and nuns. Okay, but in India, it's often used for other people. For instance, the teacher Shanti Mai calls all of her people who come to her meetings and who might have taken a mantra with her, she calls them her sangha. Many people do this. They use that term. They mean the group of people who come to certain meetings, almost like congregation in a Christian usage. So we're the Natural Rights Sangha. But the main word here is ananda. Now, ananda is often translated as bliss. To me, the translation as bliss is a misnomer. You look at all these saints and all these enlightened people, you see them in pictures, and when you're blissed out, you're skipping down the cobblestones feeling groovy. You're happy, you're laughing. Bliss is cool, man. You know, I mean, this is like the old hippie on a good trip. This is bliss, right? Well, a lot of these sages are just sitting there. They're not exactly acting blissed, but the other definition of ananda is peace. And this is why I mentioned Jesus and the peace that surpasses all understanding, and what Ramesh called Sukha Shanti, which is the divine or ultimate peace. That's what we're looking at. That to me is what we find on the spiritual path when we get there. We have moments early, and hopefully more and more moments as time goes along, until that's just where we live. That is us. And that's our goal. And what's funny is, well, goals are a whole other topic. But in the beginning, always we have to try. We have to practice. We have to do what we can to learn. And then as we move forward, we get other perspectives. That's true for 99% of people. There are a few exceptions. So if anyone says, oh, you don't need to do anything, well, I'm sorry, but the Buddha and Ramana Maharshi and Shankara and about 1 million other true saints said, oh yeah, you do. You got to start doing some things. Start off, that is, doing some things. Later on, the doing takes a different perspective. It's more of a being. And so the person who says go from A to Z without taking any steps in between, 1 in 1,000 can maybe do it, but I don't recommend trying. It's a big leap, and most people can't. Although some teachers tell you to do it. The third one is to commune with nature in some way every day, even if it's only shutting the eyes and remembering a nice place that you've been or a nice day you've had out in nature. Do that. Take a deep breath and do that. Even if you can just walk through a park on the way home if you live in a big city, or you have a tree outside your window you can focus on for a few moments if you're in a big urban environment, or something. We are on this plane, in this framework, we are biological, and biology is part of nature. And if we don't acknowledge that and somehow commune with that at some point every day, eventually, guess what? It's unnatural, and you will have ill health. natural tends to be healthier than unnatural. So be natural. Now, the next part is to practice the big three. And the big three are Shravana, Manana, and Nidyidasana. And Nidyidasana, it's always hard for me to pronounce, so I'll start with Shravana, which is supposed to be first anyway. Shravana is listening to and reading the words of real teachers. You learn from a real teacher, either in book form, from YouTube, hopefully in person. If you get the opportunity, you take it in. And then, just like in our precepts, Manana, which is not mañana like in Spanish, it's spelled the same, but it's not, okay? Manana is to reflect upon this, to consider it deeply, to meditate upon it, to work out the message from the teacher that he or she gave you in whatever form, and to consider it deeply. And then hopefully, after having heard it or read it or somehow attained it with Shravana, you will consider it with Manana. And then you will come to Nidyidasana, which is abiding in it, which is being at one with the teachings. Okay, this is what we want. This is where you're going. And of course, it's very important based on that to choose the right teachers. But if you do Manana correctly, you will get the right teachings. Because if you unfortunately come across a teacher that is, pardon the expression, half-assed, they will inevitably have some charm and some energy and some truth to what they say. That's why you're there in the beginning. But there's also likely, in too many cases, to be some bull stuffings and to be some incorrect information. Look carefully. Consider carefully. As the precepts say, don't believe anything anyone says without careful consideration. Please. You know, you're setting yourself up for hurt. I don't care whoever it is. Consider it for yourself before you take it in. Which brings us to the next part, which is obviously beware spiritual teachers. And here, you know, I mentioned all of the types of, I mentioned pastors and teachers and gurus and reverends and fathers and masters or whomever, okay? And if they ever try to tell you that this is the only way or this is the way and I'm the only one who knows it and my way is the best for everybody, as I've said in another tape, get out of there. Their ego is bigger than their knowledge. If they have any understanding at all, they'll say, hey, if it worked for me, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody just because it worked for me. Okay, anyone who says it does, no. Now, the next part is to understand that awakenings and powers by themselves mean absolutely nothing. Okay, I know a lot of people who've had great spiritual awakenings. After years of meditation and practice, they have this huge aha, and they're crying, they're weeping, they're laughing, they're having this, they might be shaking, they have all these things going on, and it's obvious that they are at that moment having a huge spiritual experience, which is great. We usually call it an awakening. An awakening does not mean you're enlightened. An awakening means nothing. It just means that you've had a taste of what a true sage like Ramana Maharshi or the Buddha lived in all the time. Okay, the taste doesn't mean anything as far as being a great teacher or being capable of doing anything. So don't think it does. Another thing that means nothing is powers. Siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-S in India. Siddhis mean nothing. Okay, I can read your mind. I can levitate. I can heal you. I can give you good fortune. I can predict the future. I can move that with my finger across the table. I'm sorry. That means absolutely zilch as far as spiritual attainment. Some people are born with these abilities. Some people spend years developing them while leaving their very human self very intact, except for the fact that they've got this one special ability they can do. It's impressive. It looks good. You meet someone who's dressed in robes and has a flowing beard and a dynamic hood, and they can look at you and read your mind and tell you this stuff. Wow, they must be holy. I'll follow them. Chances are, if they're doing that crap, they're not. The real ones don't let you know they've got the powers. They don't need to, and they don't want you to know it, because then everyone will come and want to show off, and they'll never be able to do anything else. Now, vasanas and samskaras are traits, inherited qualities, things we've learned in this life or things that came into this life with us, which often influence our behavior. And for a person, a man or a woman who's had an awakening, many of them believe, hey, I'm enlightened now. But if that teacher has not worked through his or her vasanas and samskaras, then stuff is going to tear them down. And they will end up being one of the bad teachers who's out there making love to all the women, or taking all the money, or becoming a drug addict and taking all the money and having a lot of sex and bullying people and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one man, Devin Adler, wrote a book called Guru, ? The Story of Heather. In that book, he presented the idea that almost every guru who failed fell to one of five things: sex, drugs, fame, power, or money. So you have an awakening, you're feeling really good about yourself, and then you run off and become a teacher. But, boy, those women look nice. Boy, it sure would be nice to have a little bit more money, wouldn't it? You know, I'd like to see my face on the cover of that magazine. Yeah, you know, yeah, you know, that stuff really made me feel good. I think I'd like more of that. If you have not curbed those instincts, well, not instincts, traits, qualities, inherited doings, you should not teach. As a person looking for a good teacher, check your teacher out for those five things very carefully. If they seem greedy, if things seem really expensive, if things seem nervous making regarding the teacher's energy, regarding the other or same gender, or anything like this, take off. Head for the hills. I like that expression, head for the hills. But, okay, those are the beginnings of the practices, pointers, and possibilities. And we'll stop there because I don't like to go too long with any one. And we'll have a second part that covers the rest of them, and also some opportunities within the Natural Rights Sangha for you. So, hey, thanks for listening to this, and see you soon.